Thank you for that introduction, Catherine. I want to also thank the two speakers that came before me because they set up some big points for us that I'm going to be emphasizing here in the presentation. To Paul, statement just about how big an impact the population aging phenomenon is. I found a report that was dated in 1999, done by what's called our national lab. The national lab are the people who get together in secret somewhere and they do things like design the atomic bomb as a solution to World War II. These are big thinkers in our country. They get together and every few years they say, this is what we have to pay attention to. And this report unfortunately got shelved because the following year and a couple years later, the nation's attention got dramatically refocused. But this notion of the demography, the demographic challenges that are being presented by our extended longevity, it's a huge phenomenon that we simply have to embrace. The other point I want to acknowledge is what Director Barella talked about was structures and processes. And that's something that we're going to emphasize here as we turn our attention from the individual, the aging worker, if you will, to the organization in which they have it. That is the employer. This is a key element that we think has been missing in a lot of research up until now. And we're grateful that the group at NextFifty took our proposal and they said, yeah, this is interesting. It's not focusing on individual older adults. You're actually focusing on the organizations in which older adults inhabit. And if we can change those organizations, we can then change the lives of older adults. That's our premise here. And so we actually came into Colorado as strangers. Last year at this time, Catherine came in from LA. I came in from Iowa City. And a lot of folks said, who are you? And what are you doing here? And we said, we really want to help. We see Colorado as just this dynamic place. As the governor mentioned, you have a booming economy. You have people who are not only aging in place here, but they are moving here from other states. You also have a very dynamic rural-urban continuum going here. It's a really neat state. And we're really thankful you've embraced this. And we want to acknowledge all the people we've met in the past year who've helped us with this project. We've had a survey in development for a few months, and we would run it by folks and say, are these the right words we're using? Are these the right questions? And we got feedback from you all. We also, in planning this conference, engaged folks. We would not have gotten such a great place to hold this meeting if it wasn't for you folks here in Colorado helping us. So I want to start off by saying that. Thank you. So what we're looking at today is the evolving labor force, and we're not getting around it. I think now what I love with aging data is we got so many ways to tell you the same thing. Aging people are coming, okay? For the students in the room, the younger people, I refer to this series that was on recently called Game of Thrones. The people of the North, they're out there. They're coming, okay? We need to be ready, okay? Just another data point to say that. But what's also happening within the aging space, even though we see it as itself a chunk of diversity, right, along with race and gender, even within the aging population itself, there's increasing diversification. And where you all, who are employers, are seeing it are in your industries, okay? Different industries seem to be retaining or attracting aging workers to significantly different rates. Healthcare industry, utilities, public administration have more or a higher median age of employees than other industries. So what we have out here is a very diverse type of environment in which employers themselves, some of them already get this. Some of you are here today. You're on the front end of this. You're like, yeah, we have a lot of folks in our firm. Don't know what we should do for them. Other folks are like, we don't see them so much yet. But you will, okay? So here's our academic moment. Thanks to Director Barella, he teed this up. There's a concept out there called structural lag. And what it means is that the structures that we create as a society, okay, often can lag behind the demographics that are coming about. Easy example here is think about entry of women into the labor force. Okay, up until the 60s or 70s, there were women in the labor force, but it wasn't common, it wasn't normative, okay? And the workplaces themselves weren't properly equipped. Just the easy example is women who decided to have children. Okay, how does that work? A lot of that was done on the fly in the 70s and 80s. Decisions were made about, well, yeah, you can have a baby and then bring it back to work, but okay, let's accommodate that. And it took at least a decade for FMLA to happen after that. It takes a while, but now, 2020, it's normative. In fact, when I give talks in the medical health community, I remind the physicians there that now the majority of medical school admissions are women. That wasn't there 30 years ago. It's normative now. The structures and processes of medical education and healthcare delivery have been transformed. Aging has messed up our education system, okay, in a good way. You go to a rural state like Iowa, we have K through 12 50 years ago. Oh, I went to the university school, is what I hear from our senior faculty. It was just a one school. Everybody went there. Well, when the boomers arrived, sheer volume, just numbers, forced the local school boards to say, we can't keep cramming everybody into one big giant school building. We have to start creating elementary schools, high schools, these things called middle schools. Those are all structures that just weren't created for no reason. They were structures created because of the demands of the baby boom. Well, guess what? Those baby boomers are now 65 and up. And now they're coming to you in the workforce and they're saying, we want the workforce to address our needs, just like we had to change the school systems to address the need of this volume of new learners. Employers are facing these challenges being brought to them by well-informed older adults because they're on the AARP websites, they're affiliated with groups in the aging community, and they're becoming empowered and saying, this is what we want. Okay, we want our workplaces to do this stuff for us because we're going to be working longer, but, you know, as things go, age does bring about change. Meanwhile, employers, the other side of the coin, okay, they can do a lot here. Okay, they can create climates, they can create cultures that facilitate this. And right now, what we've observed is this big gap between the two. You have a lot of older adults out there, they're starting to use phrases like, well, what about a bridge opportunity for me? HR, a what? It's a bridge opportunity. I was reading Modern Maturity, and it's a way I could continue working on a seasonal basis. And the employer's like, okay, that's the gap. 10 years from now, when you onboard in a company, you'll get a brochure that hopefully explains to you all the different options that are available to you, right? Hey, if you want to work for us 40 hours a week, pretty straight up 9 to 5, that's great. But you know what? You can also take a seasonal pathway. You can take a part-time pathway. In our work, we found one university where they did FMLA sharing. Brilliant idea. The younger female faculty and men, too, are allowed to go out under FMLA with a child. They wanted to be gone for 12 weeks, but guess how long the semester runs? 16 weeks. It created a problem. So then they went to their emeriti faculty and said, hey, don't you want to kind of show off just for a little bit? Come on campus and help us out. So they created a partnership service. So now as couples realize that they may be out next semester and there's a teaching gap, they go to this site where there's plenty of emeriti faculty say, yeah, I can handle it while you're away. That's closing the gap. And that's what we kind of are aspiring to do here. So there's an emerging consensus among employers. We need to start thinking about this. The individual experienced employees are saying, yeah, we want this, okay? We have to come together now and figure it out. This is like a matchmaking service we're here to do today, okay? That was our goal with this project. I don't think we actually wrote matchmaking service for aging Coloradans, but what we said to do is we're going to figure out who's out there. Who are the live wires in Colorado? Who's interested in this? Okay, then we're going to find out what your landscape looks like, right? A lot of mountains here, a lot of rivers, a lot of streams. I have no idea. I've been to parts of Colorado I never knew existed. You have a very interesting state. Okay, it's a great state. And we want to know what your employers are doing. What have you thought about this? So we developed this survey, and we fielded it among up to about 150 of you from across the state. And now we're here to share our results. So that's our goal for first year. Finally, I'm home. Data. Okay, here we go. Here come some slides and numbers. I like them. I'll help you. If you don't like this kind of stuff, we'll point out the highlights. Okay. So first, who responded? And before I get going here, I want to also take a moment to acknowledge my support team. Team Iowa is we're called. Hannah and Steve and Chelsea, who's not here because she's expecting. So we had 3 folks over the last year help us come together and find you folks. You weren't easy to find, trust me, okay? We put out ads, we did emails, we did phone calls. I hung out at meetings. I was the guy in the corner going, hey, come over here, okay? Some of you are here because of that, okay? It was really an effort for us to get connected with you all and explain to you, no, we're not here, we're not a business, we're not trying to angle this, we just like knowledge. Thanks to you all who responded to the survey. We got 150 of you, which is a good number for us to start seeing trends, and that's what I want to show you now. First off, it's all over the place. I asked Steve and Hannah, what are animal services? I mean, I should know this being from Iowa, right? I'm assuming it's something like that, but I don't know. They're out there, and apparently there's companies who employ older adults in animal services, but they're everywhere else you think too. Retail, the leisure industry, the food and beverage industry, travel and rec, you're all over the place, which is good. That's what we want in a sampling. The other thing we want is a diversity of size. So we have small employers. I've talked to folks, well, there's just 10 of us. And I said, well, what's your average age? Well, we're all over 60. I'm like, okay, I want to hear from you. Okay. A lot of consulting firms, right? White collar folks who come together at the end of their career and say, I've been in HR all my life. I now want to be an HR consultant. So they've organized small firms. We also have big multinational companies that weighed in on this survey too. They're like, well, we have offices all over the world. Should we answer your survey? And I'm like, absolutely. Because the policies you uphold, whether they're created in the national office or generated here, are things we want to know about. The other thing too we looked at is sort of the profit status or organizational direction, government. You know, this is the typical stuff you see in BLS data. And again, nicely done. We got a range here. So what did we go out and do? We said we want to understand your landscape, so we simply asked, what do you do, right? Isn't it great when academics really boil it down to easy stuff? Are you doing anything? And we had a list. Are you doing anything in wellness for your employees? Are you doing anything in retirement pathways for your employees? And we created it in such a way where we had more general statements like, are you being nice to your employees by providing them health insurance coverage? Okay. Then we asked the tricky question, the one that was more specific to those experienced employees. Are you being nice to your employees by providing in your EAP program a counselor that could provide you advice in the event that you get involved in an elder caregiving situation? Oh, because there's a difference, right? It's one thing to say, yeah, we have an EAP program. You know, everybody who has a substance abuse problem, we get them connected. That's targeted for a general employee. Then we say, well, what about dealing with a parent at the end of life? What do you do with those? So that's the distinction we made, okay? Because the ones who are age-friendly take that extra step. Then we did the analysis. We said, well, what makes an organization more likely to do that? What's distinguishing you folks from each other? Is it the workforce? So I do a lot of research on state politics. You would think like Florida. The reason people ask me, why'd you end up in Iowa? I was in San Francisco before. Iowa's a great state too. But at the time, guess what? 2000, we were the oldest state in the country. Okay? And our two senators from that state, Senator Grassley's and Harkin, both were in aging policy. I mean, we were a nexus at that time of studying what is it. But when you actually go out and look, is having an older adult population like Florida has, like Iowa has, translate to actual policy and programs? In that research, we found, not really. Surprised, right? You'd think Florida would be all over this, but they're not. What about your culture? DEI statements on aging? What about your climate? Do you actually have brochures in which you have pictures of older adults on the cover? Right? Think about that. If you hand out an employee handbook and your cover shows a couple of kids drinking coffee, where's the older worker? Stuff like that. So, this is a story of good and bad, okay? On the one hand, what we found with recruitment and retention strategies, one of the first things we'll do when we come in and talk to an employer is, what kind of baseline are you establishing? Are you actually out there looking to recruit older persons? Knee-jerk response we get is, oh, well, you can't do that. That's age discrimination. Can't say we only hire people 50 and older, right? Okay, but we've learned there are other ways to get at that. We value experience, okay? We value skill sets. And we find out, and again, this is general to the HR community, they've learned to target their messaging in job ads and in interviews to be age insensitive, okay? It's a done deal now, okay? Supposedly. So on one hand, it's a good story, but then we said, hey, you know, sorry about that. There's all these groups out here, and a lot of them are here today. AARP, for example, Senior Services America. They're what we call third parties or partners. And their whole focus is to augment or supplement efforts in the employer space to help them work with the aging workforce. So what we heard earlier from Director Barella and the governor was, we have programs in the state to help get older adults tuned up with skills like Microsoft Office, right? Good thing. So we asked the employers, do you even know they're out there? That's the next step. That's what we're talking about. So yeah, you're writing these job ads. You're doing a good job with those. But are you actually really connecting with that market of experienced employees who want to come work for you for whatever reason? Not so much. Something's going on there. Next thing we checked into, good news, bad news story, wellness and safety. A lot of the employers, okay, will offer wellness programs generally. Okay, we'll give you insurance, we'll give you support for health education, health screening, right? We'll give you flu shots. These are all universal though. Again, sort of the good news, bad news is, yeah, everybody in our company can come in and get a flu shot, okay? Everybody can go sign up for the gym if they want to. I'm overstating everybody. These are half of the employers, but these are the entry-level efforts. Then we asked about more detailed stuff, like, are you doing something specific? Something that would attract your experienced employees to these programs. So at the University of Iowa, we have 15,000 employees. Who knew? Okay, and we just built this state-of-the-art wellness center because that's the thing you got to do in the academic arms race to attract students. You got to have super dorms now. Remember the old dorms with your cinder blocks? And those don't work, okay? And you got to have these academic athletic centers with, we have an Olympic-sized pool now. It's in Iowa. And we have one of those running water things. Anybody do this? I had no idea, but that's what the students like when they come, just floating in the lazy river, okay? And I said, well, what about programming? Because I used to work at a YMCA in Chicago, and I said, when is the peak time for experienced employees to come to the rec center? Middle of the day, okay? When I was at Indiana University, I played basketball a lot, and when I flipped into a lab situation with my faculty, they said, hey, you look like you play basketball. Why don't you come join us? I'm like, sure. I'd show up at 5 o'clock when most of the other guys were there. They're like, no, we play at 11, right before lunch. And I'm like, what? And the whole gym was older folks, older employees who use that time because it's not as busy and they don't feel as threatened. And so we actually got a picture of our former president in one of our classes that we developed at the Wellness Center called Silver Sneakers and in Water Aerobics. We didn't put a big sign on him and said, hey, this is for you, President Mason, okay? But it was clear that if it was offered at that time of day, and when she showed up, guess who else was there? She felt very comfortable being there. That's what we're talking about, that extra step. What are the companies doing to create that? Again, a drop-off, not so much. Next one, EAP programs. Again, on the general level, providing a lot of these opportunities, about half of our respondents. But then when we ask for what are you doing directly to get support for your aging population, it falls off, okay? Here, this is caregiver support. So again, using Iowa's example, when we did this work at Iowa, I became our HR department's resident gadfly. They saw me, because every time I asked on our family survey, are we asking questions about getting connected with caregiving, elder caregiving? No, we're not doing that. We need to ask. We found out that 20% of the employees at the University of Iowa actually are involved in elder caregiving relationships currently. And that's more than the number of employees that were involved in childcare. But yet on our campus, we had plenty of access to childcare, but we have absolutely no senior daycare options in Johnson County, Iowa. What do these folks do? We have a quote from our provost. Says, I get worried in the middle of the day because my mom is at home alone. Right? This is a provost. I get calls every now and then from my neighbor who said they saw my mom wander out. But because it's Iowa, we're friendly, it's okay. Not that you're not friendly here and it's not okay there, but it can be distressing. And I said, well, if we had an option on campus where you could have your mom hang out for the morning while you take these big important meetings, this would work. She's like, yeah. And I go, well, we have it for kids. That's what we're talking about. Long-term welfare. It's not just about you when you're with me. Hopefully, it's more than just a transaction. You work for me, I pay you, the end. Okay? We know also that companies can confer benefits. Health insurance, retirement savings. And as Paul indicated before, not all the companies are doing that. Okay? But a lot of them are. So they are not just giving salary to experienced employees, but they're conferring benefits as well. But a drop-off. We extend health benefits to all our employees. We allow you insurance, but when you retire, and this always hasn't been the case. Again, at Iowa, we're very generous. When you retire, the emeriti faculty have their supplemental insurance covered. How many companies are doing that? Not so much anymore. And this is what's interesting, right? Because if you're in the HR world, you're looking at costs all the time. And you're divorced somewhat from what those costs are tied to. And when we talk to the HR people about their priorities, it's always the same. Changing technology, budget, and staff. And when we get their surveys back, we try to say, well, do you see where the aging workforce really plays a common theme or thread throughout these? You can reduce your costs if you work with your experienced employees. You can meet your staffing challenges if you work with your experienced employees, but they just don't connect there yet. So the easier response has been to, well, let's just stop giving them benefits. Well, this is problematic for a lot of these folks because, as Paul said, the expectation is when they retired and all these programs were set up, they'd be dead by 74. And this is my dad. My dad was a World War II vet. Okay, went through his money with him. Brian, my other brothers. I only plan to live to 74. And we opened, that was the opening to our conversation with him. And then we opened up the books. We're like, oh, what do you know? He pretty much planned to live to 74, and it was a zero-sum game for him. Dad lived to 84. My mom lived to 90. Oops. Okay. And I get it, right? For business, it's like, well, we didn't anticipate this cost. Well, nobody did. Neither did your employee. We're stuck. It's nobody's fault. We're not pointing fingers here. So it's just something we need to think about. What can we do for the longevity of the people who've given us their labor over all these years? Another big one is flexible retirement pathways. Give me a way out of here. I don't want to go from 0 full-time to 0 part-time or full retirement. I'm not ready for it. Let me phase out gradually. Okay, and there's a different set of expressions: bridge jobs, encore careers, retire, rehire. We asked, do you do this stuff? And we found out, I can't go back. Yes, we can. It was varied. Again, some employers are thinking about this. Others will tell us, well, we can't do that. I get a lot of campfire knowledge when I talk to employers, HR, and executives. Campfire knowledge is something they just say that they heard at a cocktail party or out on a trip that says, we can't do this. And I'm like, because of what? Well, we were told that, the way the pension fund works is we can't draw it out and do this at the same time. Or we were told we can't do this because it's illegal to do that. I read books, okay? I read laws and regulations for a living. And I just say, show me. And then usually the conversation sputters off into something else. Like, hey, did you see the Nuggets game last night? Okay. You got a good team here, by the way. Okay? So this is what's happening. They're given the opportunity to do this, but there's this initial point of resistance that comes up, and I don't know where it comes from, but it's enough to keep them from going forward. And that's where we're at with a lot of options. These are the different imagination. Okay. When we worked for another company, I told them, they were asking about, well, what should we do? And I said, well, academics, at least my colleagues in academics, the English professors, the history professors, these are the guys I hang out with. We don't look at our financial portfolio on a daily basis. We really don't. In fact, we probably don't even understand what a diversified portfolio means with multiple options in the collective mutual fund space. Hey man, I just want to teach Shakespeare. I want to talk about the Polish-Russian war. That's what my thing is. That's what I pay attention to. I'm giving you my money, and I'm trusting you to get me that whatever percentage return that you're offering me. And you know what? I'm not that discriminating between your company that's getting me a 7.2% return and the other company is going to get me a 6.4% return. Just not. Sorry. Call the accounting department, the economics department, the business school. Oh yeah, they're all over this. We want a more diverse portfolio. Okay, well you're just 10% of the university. The rest of us want to know about what we are going to do with ourselves. Because what we found in academics, which is now the oldest profession in the country, tenured faculty, they hang around. Okay, we are the highest median age work occupational group out there now. And we said, why are you still here? Not that it's bad that you're here, don't get me wrong. Why? 1/3 of them said, I love what I do. I got all this intellectual capital accumulated. I'm still sharp enough to teach the young people things. They don't throw me out yet. But that's only 1/3 of them. The other 2/3 said, I don't know what else to do. Honestly. Paul said, the biggest thing you'll have in your life, time. Okay? Pink Floyd, anybody listen to Dark Side of the Moon? Come on. It's time. And you really want to go to faculty meetings? Referee plagiarism cases? This is what you want to do with your remaining time? I just don't know what else to do. You're smart. You got a PhD and an MD or a JD, and that's your answer. We found that companies that give you options to come to things like this, to have somebody like a Mark Friedman, a Paul Irving, a Joe Coughlin come to your campus and tell you about what's called a holistic retirement strategy, bang, you start thinking about things differently. You mean, this is another fun story. I was stocked with junior colleges. What's the number one major or arts degree attained at a junior college, in Iowa at least? Anybody want to guess? We got to be more interactive here. Nope. Nope. This is, guess what's on the professor's mind. I love playing this game because we never get there. I'll take one more. Culinary. How to be a cook. Okay, let's go with this. We got a lot of Arby's and McDonald's and Steak and Shake, and I'm thinking, where in the world are these kids going with a culinary degree in Iowa? Okay? You with me? Okay? They don't go to Iowa. They go higher on with cruise ships, vacation spots. They work seasonal jobs in the kitchens, and they're high performers because they learned how to separate eggs and use a whisk properly. And they got it at our local community college for like nothing, $5 a class. I'm like, oh, wow, that's really cool. This is what we're talking about. So what makes some organizations more likely to do this? This is always my favorite part of spending a year doing research, and I'm up to confirm what my brothers would say, duh, you really needed to tell us that. The companies that are offering the general stuff, the wellness programs, the environmental safety, the stand-up desks, stuff like that, EAPs, the general package of good things, they're more likely to be mid-size employers, right? Because the smaller employers, they don't have the bandwidth for this stuff. It's just, let's be real, okay? They're also more likely to be government or public employers. And we suspect some of that is because there's probably a higher, or at least a perceived higher level of legal obligation, right? I heard this in Washington all the time. Well, we have to do this because it's the law. That's interesting. My family ran a restaurant in Chicago. Trust me, we weren't reading, until the guy came to inspect us. That's probably the only time we really paid attention. And, taking him on a fishing trip every now and then helped, Sorry, Dad. That's how it worked for a lot of employers. We don't read this stuff. We're so busy just trying to get food out and getting customers in. We weren't aware of all these things. It wasn't like we were blatantly trying to do anything wrong. It's just that these folks pay attention to it more. But here's the good one. The ones who were doing more of this, they were thinking about it. Aging workers are important. We're starting to see this as a value. Then we looked at what we call those mature programs, the next step up. Same thing. Are you doing recruitment and retention efforts? Are you providing that extra bump in long-term welfare opportunities? Do you provide flexible pathways? Looks like the same kind of employers. Okay, the mid-sized ones, okay, the government versus the private sector ones, and the ones who just assign a value to it. Now this is where we get, where are my data friends? We need a bigger sample here because I can't really dig into it much further with a sample size of only 149. So this is my base solicitation of all my friends saying, last night somebody asked me, what would you be happy with? I said, I want 30 employers of every type. Leisure, for-profit. And he's like, I go, yeah, that's about 3,000 employers. Oh, and then we want the individual data within those organizations. Data. That's what we need to get to really find out which sectors and which economies are really addressing the aging workforce and which ones are lagging behind. But we're starting to see this. We're starting to see these trends. And I want to thank Catherine's group because they were one of the first in the country to start doing this. My pals in academics haven't started looking at this stuff yet. We're just starting to crack this egg. Now, here's the interesting thing, and again, to thank the previous speaker, diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a phenomenon that's overtaken employers. On the university campuses, I just went through a bias training. A lot of us are doing this now, DEI statements, okay? Someone said, the last frontier is aging, okay? Because you hear a lot of these diversity, equity, inclusion. We had it in our own department. It was all about gender and race. And I just needled the guy, and I'd say, well, what about the old faculty? Aren't we included? And what's interesting is they don't see it that way. It's like, come on. It's everybody. The rainbow is for everybody, not just particular groups, not just veterans, not just people of color, not just people based on preference, age too. We're thinking about it, okay? We haven't formally developed one yet as the common response, but of the ones who did, okay, and this is my conversion moment, because I got to admit, when I first started going to these sessions about, bias in science, right, they'd have these like examples, well, a scientist always wears a white coat. Oh, yeah, okay, thanks. Okay, I was like, what is this stuff going to do? Well, guess what? The ones who are paying attention to this and thinking about aging are also taking the next step. They're saying, what can we do to accommodate your workspace? Can we give you a stand-up desk? Okay? What can we do to get you to a local college to take the class you need to keep your skills sharp? They're doing it. What can we do to go find older persons who may be looking for a second career? They're calling AARP. They're the ones making the extra step. And it's in their mindset. I would not have expected this. Anna and Steve kept, hey, old guy, time for you to learn something here. DEI matters. I'm up here for those of you who, like me. This is amazing to me in a good way. So for all of you who are on the front end of this stuff, you're like, yeah, I told you so. So give yourself a pat on the back. Okay? This is a classic example of what you going on here is, again, back to research now, higher level academics. We good on time? That's a super thumbs up or a kind of like bring it in. Good. Anybody study adoption and dissemination stuff, right? I used to shout out entrepreneur program and all that. What makes one company decide they're going to go in on something and then the rest of the industry follow? There's all this stuff in the business world. Well, we have it here in Colorado. You guys are a classic example of adoption and dissemination. On the far left, the innovators, the ones that are doing the whole package of different aging programs. Now, mind you, not any particular company is doing everything, but they're at least doing 2 or 3 things that then that's what we said, okay, they're on the front edge. Those are the ones that have the staff. They're big enough to have an HR person attend meetings like this. They're big enough to have resources available. So if they had to go and find outside counsel to give them some support, they can do it. Okay? They also have the mindset. This is something we should do, either because I went to one of these seminars or I went online or I had a personal experience. We actually asked this in another survey about what companies were more likely to do this, and we asked the HR person directly, why are you doing this? And they said, I went to a training session. It was as simple as that. I went to a SHRM meeting and they spent 2 hours that day walking through what I could do in this field. And I went back to my boss and I said, should I do this? And the boss is like, yeah, it's all took. Then you have a lot of companies who are in the early majority, right? You're already doing the AAP programs. You're already thinking about different types of approaches to benefit structures, but you haven't gone all the way. And then there's the laggards. Now, let's be frank here. We only had 146 companies respond to our survey. Now, class, What is our challenge when we sent that survey out to over 1,500 Colorado employers? What do we call that? It's called the respondent bias. So imagine all the people who got our email. Hi, I'm from the University of Iowa. I'm not going to pay you anything, and I'm going to ask you to spend like an hour of your time thinking of stuff you got no time to think about. Oh, and by the way, we want you to go pull some data and answer detailed questions about how, yeah, ding, no. Steve was Mr. Favorite for I don't know how many people. We called, we emailed, please, pretty please. All those who didn't respond is what I'm kind of worried about. Because I somehow suspect in my survey response minds, they're the ones that are like, we're not doing anything over here. Now, to their point, some of them could be doing stuff. Others are like, come on, I'm a shop of 12 people. You know, the consulting firm, when I talk to them, we're all happy. We're all white collar. We all get paid everything we want. We employ my aunt. We don't need this. I understand that. But there is a large group out there that kind of remain in the dark on this. And either they're choosing to do so or something. I don't know. So, concluding thoughts, finally. We got a baseline here for you. Now we kind of a map of your terrain. We kind of know what's out there, right? Looking at the mountains, I think about the days of your explorers. They had to have maps to get over those things, right? Or at least they made some for the people who come after them. Well, that's what we're doing here. We're making maps. So we know HR is thinking about this. We know what they can do in this space, okay? Lots of stuff that could be happening. We now know that, and we know that it's happening at least enough that we got this room full of people. And hello, you're it. You're either interested or you're already doing it. You guys are leading the way. You're on the front end of that curve, okay? That's our baseline. We start here. Now we go up, okay? Somebody asked me about this last night, ceiling. What's that analogy? And I said, well, I don't know. I was trying to be clever, right? It was breaking the glass ceiling was used when women entered the workforce. I'm like, I don't want to be so violent, lots of shards and things. How about we just raise the ceiling, okay? So we have a lot of opportunity just to push this up without really doing too much. This will promote prosperity for your employers across the state, as the governor mentioned. This will also promote prosperity for every person who's staying here in Colorado to age successfully or deciding to relocate here. Thank you very much.